My talk today is about how we introduce some gamification in learning Agile Scrum. I work for the Defence College of Technical Training, and we generally are teaching military personnel. I'm going to apologise in advance because I haven't got lots of whizzy graphics and stuff like that, and there may be some large lumps of text which I'm going to try and get through fairly quickly because of the overall blanketed time. So this is roughly what I was going to talk about, starting with aims and objectives and working our way through Scrum development, how we implement it in practice, and then some conclusions. So the aim initially for us was how do we improve software engineering teaching and to make it more engaging and interactive for students. When I learned software engineering back in the days when I attended university, it was all paper-based, and of course today's demographic is quite different, and most of the students we see are much more tech-savvy. So a little bit of introduction. Software engineering has been an essential part of any computing degree for a good number of years. Certainly I got taught it when I was at the university many moons ago. Agile over that time has emerged as the most successful software development approach amongst all the other sort of design techniques and modelling techniques that we could possibly use. So of these, Scrum particularly has emerged as the most popular development methodology. And if you look on any of the job sites for software engineers and developers, you'll often see them advertising with Scrum Masters and people with Scrum experience. So it's effectively the de facto standard for the software development industry. Scrum development is a complete process from design right through to development of a product, encompassing all those elements that you'd expect to see in any methodology. So it's a combination of the iterative and incremental process models, but it's designed to overcome some of the issues with those. The sort of issues it will deal with is the changing requirements. So it focuses on the process adaptability and customer satisfaction by rapid delivery of working products. That's the aim of it. So it's achieved by dividing the product into a number of small incremental builds. That's what we're trying to do. These builds are provided in iterations. That's why it's a combination of iterative and incremental. And each iteration has an elapsed time of around 3 to 30 days, and that's quite strictly adhered to. So we don't want to go beyond that if we can attempt it. So development is going to look a little bit like this. You have a number of sprints, which are the iterative approaches. Each sprint will have a planning phase, a design phase, a build phase, test phase, and a review at the end. I'm not going to say anything about that, just to say these are the key roles within Scrum development. I think some of them are development team member, for example, is a pretty obvious one. So how are we implementing this? So to change the delivery, we came across a collaborative working tool called Trello. This is not a Scrum tool, but you can adapt it to be a Scrum tool to develop Agile Scrum projects. So Trello works on having boards and lists and cards, and each of these represent different aspects of the development phase. So things like the product backlog, release backlog, sprint, and burn down charts. There's more explanation of that in the paper if you want to read that, or you can ask me questions later. So for us, the students are divided into teams, and we make a game plan to design a Trello project board for a given case study. So we may give them something like some sort of vehicle recovery or something like that. And for military, that's quite a complex task. because if you're covering a tank in the middle of a field, it's a bit more complicated than just the RAC turning up to your car on the side of the road. So they present their Trello boards once they've designed them at a game competition to compete for rewards. And I'm not talking about sort of large rewards. The sort of things that we might do is give them some vouchers for the coffee shop in the student area. It's not huge. But it is it's enough of an incentive for them to engage with it. So the process is that we start by getting them to learn Agile Scrum in Trello, how we would adapt it, and then we make a game plan based on that case study in Trello, and then we get them to present their game boards or their Trello boards to an audience of fellow students and staff, and then we get them to apply this game-based learning into real project development. So how it works, well, effectively students are taught a range of systems design methodologies at the beginning. It's all the traditional ones, including Scrum, in the software engineering module. Then we use the Trello to teach all the design aspects of Agile Scrum and how to adapt the software to do that. Then we get the students are taught Scrum methodology, starting with elicitation of requirements. And so the conversion of those into user stories, which is the start of the process and the start of the building of the product backlog. And from these, the teams select which product they wish to develop, and they're loaded into sprints. And as I said earlier, sprints are about 3 to 4 weeks, maybe less, depending on what it is, and their progress is strictly monitored. So during this phase of the learning, students are given examples and reinforcement exercises in individual components of the Scrum methodology to familiarise them with the method and its design in Trello. So we divide the students into teams of 3 to 4, and we assign them that development project I was talking about earlier. And during that development period, students have to work as a team, so it's a team-based approach. And they apply their learning of Scrum and Trello and explore ideas to make their Trello board the most successful, the best they can make it, hopefully better than the other teams that are in the groupings, and then they can present that at the end of the project. So as they're doing that, they're also going to be learning a number of other events and points that take place in the background of any software development process when you're involved in producing software, and they include user interfaces being designed, roadmaps are planned, backlogs are built, code is written, bugs are caught and fixed. So students then as engineers are learning to identify problems and design solutions to make sure that everything works when it needs to. So at any given time, students experience the issues affecting the developer, and they get to understand that during that sprint while they're writing code or testing or fixing the bugs. So during the sprints, it's emphasised that without good team communication, clear goals and priorities, and an up-to-date roadmap, workloads can become chaotic. So they learn to use the software to visualise the sprints and the product development. So in this process, they're not only honing their development skills, but also communication and their Scrum skills. So this is an example Trello board. I know it's a bit difficult for you to see from the back, but I've got on the next slide, I'll show you a bit more, a sort of magnified version. But essentially, to adapt this to work for Scrum, we have a product backlog which is running down the left-hand side, and that's generated from the user stories and requirements. And then we have a sprint 1 here, sprint 2 there, which consists of key requirements that need to be developed, and then we have a release backlog, which are those which have been developed and can be released. So this is a better view of it, so you can see a bit more clearly, just looking at one half of the screen. So you can see the sprint 3 and sprint 4 there, and then we have a release backlog which relates to sprint 4, and that's the overall product backlog running down that side. And then in each individual task, you can set it to do different things. So in this particular case, it says who the members of the team are. It says roughly how many hours the task is going to take. It's got a checklist to say what needs to be done in that task, and then whether it's completed. And then these are some of the other tasks that have not been finished. And you can highlight them as being high priority or completed or whatever. And then the most important thing really is to monitor the task progress through this building as a chart, which is showing you the time elapsed and the number of items that are still outstanding. So presenting this Trello board as a game competition. So the final presentation of their developed software project in Trello is organised as a game competition to offer them some incentives and encourage them to work hard as a team and learn from the others as well.
Or we can wrap that in.
Right, okay. So students are given the opportunity to act in different roles. So this is why I showed the slide earlier. So each of them, over that 4-week period, will take an opportunity of Scrum Master managing the team. And then I'm going to skip through some of these. So what we effectively then do is ask, at the presentation, we'll ask the students how they to rate their Scrum Master. We'll also then look at some of the other key things in terms of development, such as who developed the sprints the quickest, who developed the most sprints, etc. So I'm going to just skip through that. And then we have a last session at the end, which they then are able to, the whole staff and the whole student cohorts can question them. Then we would wish that they take this on to their final project in the system, which is a real life project with sponsored from the whole of the MOD. This is a real life project. It's a more complex project. And now they have to interact with actual real people and real users who have real need. So they develop the whole project from initiation through to final completion. Part of that, we also give them some teaching on Prince 2 because that is the government standard for project development. And in the end, it's all combined into a graph, which looks a bit like that. So the Prince 2 is a wrap around the Trello and the Scrum development that happens in that controlling and managing stage. As a result, we looked at 2 cohorts running across 4 years. So the first year we delivered it as a traditional method, and then from the 2016 onwards we used this Trello board gaming approach. And in the first cohort we had an increase in marks from about 11%, and in the second cohort about 10%. So it roughly has improved the overall performance of the students. That's our contention. Because there's lots of other factors that contribute to that as well. So in conclusion, using Trello has provided an engaging and stimulating development environment for students learning Agile Scrum. It's improved their interpersonal skills, such as presentation and project development. And it's proved an invaluable aid for final project development. So thank you for listening. Are there any questions? Yes?
Did you incorporate changing requirements at any point, like from the external side, or was it all pretty much clear scope at the start?
So in terms of the project that we give them in the practice bit, that's fixed. We are not changing requirements for that. Directly staff act as the product owner, so they're the people that may change those requirements. The real life project, then requirements change because that's a real life project that's being proposed by someone else within the MOD. Yes?
You mentioned that in the title it says gamification.
Yes.
What kind of gamification factors did you incorporate into this?
So we're looking at competing against individuals, and it also in terms of competing against groups, so one group against another. And I think that's worked really well because a lot of the students are motivated in either being the best of the team, or the best Scrum Master, or maybe the best team overall.
We have time for one more question.
Yes.
You include any other game features? Because right now, what I saw from your presentation is that you use Trello as a means of visualization of the Scrum process, and then pitting teams against each other as one of the aspects of gamification. But did you use anything else to make it actually game-based?
That will be a feature development for us. We'll be looking at how we can move that. And there are other options other than Trello that are around at the moment on the market, which combine both Prince2, Scrum, and the Agile development.